Delilah Vance pressed the coffee pot button and watched the dark liquid drip into the glass carafe. The break room at Morrison Engineering buzzed with Monday morning chatter, but she kept her attention on the simple task. Her sleeves were rolled up just enough to reveal the edge of a faded anchor tattoo on her left forearm, the blue ink softened by years and sun exposure. Marcus Webb leaned against the counter beside her, stirring sugar into his mug. He glanced at her arm and smirked. "Nice ink, Delilah. Let me guess, you were in the Navy for what, 6 months before they kicked you out?" The other engineers chuckled. Delilah poured her coffee with steady hands, the steam rising between them. "Something like that," she said quietly. "Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've encountered veterans in your workplace who kept their service stories to themselves." Actually, Marcus continued, warming to his audience, "I bet you never even made it past boot camp. Probably got that tattoo at some strip mall parlor to impress guys at bars." Delilah capped the coffee pot and turned to face him. Her gray eyes held something Marcus couldn't quite read, like calm water hiding unknown depths. She took a sip of her coffee and walked back to her desk without another word. Delilah settled at her workstation and opened the structural analysis software. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, calculating load distributions for the new Harbor Bridge project. The morning light filtered through the office windows, casting long shadows across her desk. Marcus had gathered a small audience near the copy machine, his voice carrying across the open floor plan. "I'm telling you, she's probably one of those people who wear military surplus gear to look tough. That anchor tattoo is faker than a $3 bill." Sarah Chun from accounting nodded along. "I've seen those temporary tattoos. They make them look aged now to fool people." Delilah pulled up the maritime specifications for the bridge pylons, noting the depth requirements and tidal stress calculations. Her experience with naval engineering showed in the way she instinctively understood how structures needed to withstand water pressure and salt corrosion. Rick Martinez wandered over to her desk, coffee in hand. "Hey, Delilah, Marcus is saying you claim to be some kind of Navy hero. That true?" She looked up from her screen, where complex engineering diagrams showed force vectors and material tolerances. "I never claimed to be a hero, Rick. But you were in the Navy, though, right?" He pressed. Delilah saved her work and reached for a technical manual. "Yes, I served." Marcus appeared behind Rick, grinning. "For how long, though? A week? A month?" "Long enough," she replied, turning back to her calculations. By Wednesday, Marcus had turned his suspicions into a daily entertainment. He'd recruited Jake Brennan from the design department and Tom Ellis from project management, creating a small coalition of skeptics who made it their mission to expose what they called Delilah's military fantasy. During the lunch break, they cornered her near the vending machines. Marcus crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "So, Delilah, we've been thinking. If you really served, you must have some stories, right? Some heroic battles? Maybe you single-handedly won World War III?" Jake snickered. "Come on, spill the details. What was your rank? What ship were you on? Surely someone with that fancy anchor tattoo has some war stories to share." Delilah inserted coins into the machine and selected a bag of pretzels. The mechanical were filled the awkward silence. "I prefer not to talk about my service," she said simply. "That's convenient," Tom interjected. "Real veterans love sharing their experiences. My uncle was a Marine, and he tells everyone about his tours. But you're mysterious about it, because there's nothing to tell." Marcus stepped closer. "Face it, Delilah. We know you're lying. That tattoo shop's special doesn't fool anyone. You probably got it to impress some sailor boyfriend who dumped you when he figured out you were pretending." The pretzel bag crinkled in Delilah's steady grip. She met Marcus's eyes with that same unsettling calm. "If you say so, Marcus." She walked away, leaving the three men exchanging triumphant glances. The harassment continued into Thursday, but Delilah maintained her professional composure with an almost supernatural patience. During the project meeting, she presented her Harbor Bridge analysis with quiet authority, her calculations flawless, and her understanding of maritime engineering surprisingly deep. Marcus whispered to Jake loud enough for others to hear. She probably Googled all that technical stuff. Anyone can sound smart with the internet. After the meeting, department head Linda Rodriguez pulled Delilah aside. I don't know what's going on with Marcus and his friends, but your work is exceptional. Your understanding of naval architecture is impressive. Delilah nodded politely. Thank you, Linda. Where did you learn so much about ship design and harbor construction? Linda asked. Your specifications account for details most engineers would miss. Experience, Delilah replied simply. Later, while reviewing blueprints, Rick noticed something odd. Delilah was sketching modifications to the underwater support structure with an intuitive understanding that seemed beyond textbook knowledge. She drew cross-sections showing how barnacles and marine growth would affect the concrete over decades, marking potential weak points with practiced precision. You seem to know a lot about how things work underwater, Rick observed. Delilah looked up from her sketches, her pencil still poised over the paper. You spend enough time around water, you learn its habits. Marcus appeared at her shoulder. What kind of time? Watching boats from the shore? The kind that matters, she answered quietly, returning to her work. Friday brought the confrontation to a breaking point. Marcus had spent the morning researching stolen valor cases online, printing out articles, and building his case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. He waited until the entire office had gathered for the weekly progress meeting before making his move. Linda Rodriguez was reviewing the harbor project timeline when Marcus stood up abruptly. Before we continue, I think we need to address something important. We have someone in this office who's been lying about their military service. All eyes turned toward Delilah, who sat motionless in her chair, hands folded in her lap. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Marcus pulled out his printed articles. Stolen valor is a serious crime. People who pretend to be veterans for sympathy or career advancement are disgusting. They dishonor real service members who actually fought and died for this country. Jake and Tom nodded approvingly from across the table. Several other colleagues shifted uncomfortably, unsure where this was heading. Marcus pointed directly at Delilah. That faded tattoo, the mysterious non-answers about her service, the refusal to share any actual details. Classic signs of someone who's been caught in a lie. Delilah remained perfectly still, her breathing steady and controlled, her gray eyes fixed on Marcus without wavering, as if she were calculating something far more complex than structural engineering. I think Delilah owes us all an explanation, Marcus declared triumphantly. Time to come clean about your fake military career. The meeting room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Linda Rodriguez tried to regain control, but Marcus was riding his wave of righteousness. He circled Delilah's chair like a predator sensing victory. Look at her, he announced to the room. Can't even defend herself because she knows I'm right. Real veterans don't hide from questions about their service. They're proud of what they did. Sarah Chun from accounting leaned forward. Maybe we should just drop this, Marcus. It's getting kind of personal. Personal? Marcus laughed harshly. What's personal is having a fraud working alongside us. Probably lying on her resume, too. How do we know anything about her qualifications is real? Tom Ellis pulled out his phone. I'm looking up military records databases. There are ways to verify this stuff online. Delilah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You won't find what you're looking for. See? Marcus shouted triumphantly. She's admitting it. She knows there's no record because she never served. The room watched in fascination and horror as Marcus pressed his advantage. He demanded details about boot camp, ship assignments, deployment dates. With each question Delilah deflected or answered vaguely, his confidence grew. Jake Brennan stood up and applauded slowly. Congratulations, Marcus. You caught her red-handed. Stolen valor case closed. Several colleagues looked away, embarrassed by the spectacle, but unwilling to intervene. Delilah sat motionless through it all, her composure unbroken even as her professional reputation crumbled around her. Monday morning brought an unexpected announcement that rippled through Morrison Engineering like electricity. Linda Rodriguez called an emergency staff meeting, her expression more serious than anyone had seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying unusual gravity. "We've received word that Admiral Catherine Northway will be visiting our facility this Thursday. She's conducting a security review of all contractors working on military-adjacent infrastructure projects." The room buzzed with nervous energy. Admiral Northway was a legend in naval circles, known for her distinguished combat record and no-nonsense approach to military protocol. Marcus leaned back in his chair, grinning. Perfect timing. Maybe the Admiral can teach our resident fake sailor here some real military terminology. Jake whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Think she'll salute Marcus when she finds out he exposed a fraud?" Delilah sat perfectly still at the back of the room, but something had changed in her posture. Her shoulders seemed straighter, her breathing more controlled. A muscle in her jaw twitched almost imperceptibly. Linda continued reading from the official memo. "The Admiral will be reviewing personnel files, security clearances, and conducting individual interviews with key staff members. Everyone must be present Thursday morning at 0000 hours. 0000, Marcus mocked quietly. "See how easy it is to sound military?" For the first time in weeks, Delilah's calm facade showed the tiniest crack. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening slightly as Admiral Northway's name echoed in her mind. Thursday arrived with military precision. At exactly 0730 hours, a black sedan pulled into the Morrison Engineering parking lot, followed by 2 escort vehicles. Admiral Catherine Northway emerged in full dress uniform, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun, ribbons and medals creating a rainbow of distinguished service across her chest. The entire office had gathered in the main conference room, everyone dressed in their finest business attire. Marcus had positioned himself prominently near the front, eager to make an impression on the legendary Admiral. Delilah had arrived early and chosen a seat in the very back corner, partially hidden behind a support pillar. She wore a simple navy blue blazer and kept her tattooed arm carefully concealed beneath long sleeves. Her usual calm demeanor seemed strained, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. Admiral Northway entered the room with commanding presence, her sharp blue eyes scanning the assembled staff with practiced efficiency. Linda Rodriguez made formal introductions, explaining the Harbor Bridge project and highlighting key personnel. The Admiral nodded approvingly at various presentations, asking pointed questions about security protocols and engineering specifications. Marcus volunteered detailed answers about structural integrity, clearly trying to demonstrate his importance to the project. As the formal briefing concluded, Admiral Northway announced she would conduct individual interviews with selected staff members. Her gaze swept methodically across the room, cataloging faces and assessing each person with military thoroughness. Then her eyes found the back corner where Delilah sat motionless in the shadows, and Admiral Northway's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Admiral Northway's eyes remained fixed on the back corner for what felt like an eternity. The room continued its nervous chatter, but she had gone completely still, her military bearing frozen in something between shock and recognition. Slowly, deliberately, the Admiral began walking toward Delilah's corner. Each step echoed in the conference room as conversations gradually died away. Marcus turned to follow her gaze, confusion spreading across his face as he realized the Admiral was heading toward the woman he'd spent weeks humiliating. Delilah remained seated, but her hands had moved to rest flat on the table surface. Her breathing became more controlled, more measured, as if she were preparing for something inevitable. The Admiral stopped 3 feet from Delilah's chair, her decorated chest rising and falling with careful breaths. She studied the woman's face with intense scrutiny, comparing memory to reality across the passage of years. The entire office held its breath. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to warn the Admiral about Delilah's stolen valor, but something in the Admiral's demeanor stopped him cold. Admiral Northway's voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper. "Dear God, is it really you?" Delilah looked up slowly, meeting the Admiral's eyes for the first time. Her voice was equally quiet but steady. "Hello, Admiral." The Admiral's hand moved instinctively toward her chest, fingers brushing the ribbons that represented decades of distinguished service. Her eyes never left Delilah's face, as if she were seeing a ghost made flesh. Admiral Northway straightened to full military attention and executed a perfect salute. The gesture was crisp, respectful, and absolutely unmistakable in its meaning. The entire conference room gasped collectively as the decorated Admiral held her salute for a full 5 seconds. Delilah rose slowly from her chair and returned the salute with practiced precision, her movements fluid and natural despite years away from active duty. When both women lowered their hands, the Admiral's voice carried across the silent room with ceremonial gravity. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Admiral announced, turning to address the stunned office staff, "you have been working alongside Commander Delilah Vance, United States Navy. Retired, but never forgotten." Marcus's face went completely white. His mouth opened and closed silently like a fish gasping for air. Admiral Northway continued, her voice gaining strength. "Commander Vance was the tactical officer aboard the USS Tempest during the Persian Gulf crisis. She was directly responsible for the successful engagement and sinking of 3 enemy vessels that threatened coalition shipping lanes." The Admiral's eyes blazed with pride and remembered adrenaline. Her tactical brilliance under fire saved countless merchant vessels and prevented a potential massacre of civilian cargo crews. She was awarded the Navy Cross, the Silver Star, and the Purple Heart for her service. Jake Brennan's chair creaked as he slumped backward, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. Commander Vance also holds the distinction of the longest confirmed naval engagement kill in modern warfare history, Admiral Northway declared. She coordinated the precise targeting solution that eliminated an enemy destroyer at a range of 18 nautical miles. The conference room remained frozen in stunned silence as Admiral Northway's words sank in. Marcus looked physically ill, his face cycling through shades of green and gray as the magnitude of his mistake became clear. Tom Ellis had covered his face with his hands, while Jake Brennan stared at the table in mortified silence. Admiral Northway wasn't finished. She turned back to Delilah with deep respect. Commander Vance's tactical innovations are still taught at the Naval War College. Her engagement protocols became standard doctrine for destroyer operations in contested waters. Linda Rodriguez found her voice first. "Commander, I had no idea. Your personnel file listed general military experience, but nothing about combat decorations or naval command." Delilah spoke quietly, her composure fully restored. "I prefer not to discuss my service. Some experiences are better left in the past." The Admiral nodded gravely. The commander's modesty is typical of her character. She never sought recognition for her achievements, even when they warranted the highest honors our nation can bestow. Marcus finally managed to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I thought you were lying about everything." Sarah Chun from accounting looked mortified. "We all participated in this. We should have minded our own business." Rick Martinez shook his head in disbelief. "You let us humiliate you for weeks. Why didn't you say anything?" Delilah's gray eyes held no anger, only a quiet sadness. Real service doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. The ocean remembers what happened out there, even if people choose to forget. The weeks following Admiral Northway's visit transformed Morrison Engineering completely. Word of Commander Vance's heroic service spread throughout the company and beyond. Marcus submitted a formal written apology and requested a transfer to another department, unable to face Delilah after his shameful behavior. Linda Rodriguez personally restructured the harbor project to place Delilah in a senior advisory role, recognizing that her naval combat experience made her uniquely qualified to oversee maritime defense installations. The faded anchor tattoo, once mocked as fake, now served as a quiet reminder of extraordinary courage under fire. The office dynamics shifted entirely. Colleagues who had ignored the harassment now made efforts to include Delilah in conversations and decisions. Sarah Chun organized a company-wide presentation about military service and the importance of respecting veterans' privacy. Rick Martinez approached Delilah's desk one afternoon with genuine curiosity. "Commander, would you be willing to share any advice about leadership? Not war stories, just wisdom about staying calm under pressure." Delilah looked up from her engineering drawings, a small smile crossing her face. "The most important thing is remembering that strength doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from knowing who you are when everything falls apart." Admiral Northway had left behind a message of gratitude for the entire company, praising their work on critical infrastructure while noting that heroes often hide in plain sight among us. If this story moved you, share your thoughts about your favorite moment or character, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when others doubted them. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones who never feel the need to prove it.